So this is it's a G note, and we'll lower that to I don't know, 2 semitones. So what I do is I support with paper. I don't support the reed with my regular supporting tool because I don't want to make a mistake and solder them together. I mean, that's easily undoable, if that's a word, but it's just a hassle, and that's not the kind of problem that's going to happen if you support the reed with paper. Do you want to use flux? You definitely want to use flux. So I have water-soluble flux, and the thing you want to worry about is your solder. You want it to be lead-free solder. You don't want to have any lead in any part of the harmonica. So there's just a bit of solder. I'm going to put a dot, or I'm going to sort of grease up an area. That's even a lot of solder. I'm not going to take it off because it's really hard to remove. I'm just going to make a mess. But suffice to say, that's fine. I have some, what do you call this? A steel wool kind of, no, it's not really steel wool. I did some abrasive spongy thing, and this is my, just the $10 soldering iron. Always important that you clean the tip, you scrape the tip before and after. Otherwise, you're going to run into trouble. If this gets too, I don't know what the word is, oxidized or whatnot, you might actually have to use some sandpaper to clean up the tip, or else it just won't carry the heat. And so then, pardon me, I'm trying to do this at a distance. I'm not used to doing this. So you just touch close to the flux, and then you touch the tip of your lead-free solder. Just going to crackle here. Okay. You just touch it and you drop that. That didn't work. There, you just drop that blob of solder on the tip. And now, if you've made a mistake or you put way too much, you can melt it, and you could. There's some little ribbon that you can use. I don't have it here, but you could suck up some of the solder. You could pull some of it back so that there's not so much of a collection at the tip of the reed, or you can just file it away. Let it warm up. I'm going to clean off the tip of my soldering iron, and we'll see what pitch we have. I think I went down a lot more than my 2 semitones. Now, I mean, with the flux where it was, and the way I executed this, I didn't get any solder around the reed, so it's not obstructing the slot. Let's see what the pitch is. Wow. So I went down like 5 semitones, or anyway, it's easy at this point. I'm going to take a coarse file, and this is, you don't use your best file, because this the solder, lead-free solder, will clog up your files, and you'll get a lot less mileage out of your file. So use a cheap coarse file for this. You don't need a lot of precision. And I'm pushing downwards, okay? This is kind of, it's a lot more rubbery than when you file brass, so you can actually curl up the reed and damage your reed. But you want to just press down fairly hard. Plink it. So we're looking for an A. So I went up a little more than a semitone. Oh, it's like 1.5 semitones. So I got a ways to go. C, D, E, F. Oh no, sorry, it was G. I want to go down to F. Sorry. If I don't write these things down, like when I do an altered tuning, if I don't write down the target of the note, I'm going to get all confused. So we want to go to F. We want to go from G down to F sharp to F. So a whole semitone. So E flat. We need to bring it up a semitone. Sounds good. I'm sorry, we have to bring it up a whole tone. E flat to E, and then E to F. Like I said, if I don't write it down. So a little bit more than one semitone to go. Now what I'm going in smaller bites because I don't want to overshoot. It's really easy to take off too much. And I still got my coarse file, so if you're really aggressive, you take it all off. So we're right there. So we're a couple of cents away, and then you use your better file. Now I put it on the comb with the other reeds in the slot. This is close enough to say I have success. You can do the fine tuning. There, see, I overshot. But that's what it looks like when you're done. So I hope that helps. Question from Dilip. My appreciation for your idea on question and answer debate on doubts we have. How much importance do you give to tempering or stress relieving reeds after they are set in place? So I take that question to mean you've changed the shape of this reed. Is it going to stay? And the answer is I don't know. For sure, when you make a change, let's make a change. Let's take a look at this three reed. Let's see if I can do this and have a compelling demonstration in front of your eyes here. So here's the shape of the 3 reed. Okay, and let's make a change to it. Say I'll raise the tip that much. So that's what the reed looks like. I just made that change to that reed. Now let's plink it 5 times. That looks very different, doesn't it? Right? I've made a change, it bent the reed a lot, and then I plinked away more than half of the change. Right? So let's do the opposite change. Okay, see how that reed rests now? I barely push it and it goes in through the tip. After 5 plinks, after 1 plink you really see a difference, but we're back to what we were. So when you bend a reed physically, when you apply pressure and counter pressure to change the shape of a reed, you need to plink it so that it finds its final resting place. I find that when I'm working and I'm doing rapid sequence, it's sufficient to plink 5 times and then move on and do further changes, right? Ideally, you might want to plink more, but you're going to be plinking all day. And when you've finally gotten the shape that you want, so we were happy with this 7, then plink it a few extra times, and then put the reed plate away. Let it rest for a couple of days, and then check the shape again. Usually you'll find that the shape is the same, but there'll be the one outlier that I can't guarantee that either it's because I did an extra amount of work to it, or I paid less attention, or I don't know what, but it's, come back a couple of days later and you can catch your mistakes. Okay, if you remember at the beginning of the video, I said that when you change the shape of a reed, you'll change the tuning. Okay, but you can change the tuning without changing the shape. I need to let this rest anyway before I attempt to adjust the tuning, because if I adjust the tuning today and put the harp down and pick it up tomorrow, I'll be off by 5-10 cents. It could be extreme. But if I waited days, or weeks, you're approaching something that's a little bit more stable, and you know that when you tune it and you put it back down and you pick it up the next day, that if there was any tuning drift, it's more to your technique and your precision rather than drift of the reed. So reeds have temperaments. Well, reeds have, I should say, personalities. I don't want to confuse you with equal temperament and compromised temperament, but reeds have personalities, and they just need to sometimes sit down, chill out for a little bit before you do any more work. Otherwise, you'll be wasting your time. Okay. Shubham Narhal, although concert pitch is A equals 440 hertz, why do we tune harmonicas relative to 442? Well, we don't actually. We tune them a little higher. In fact, some harps from the factory these days are coming out at 447, 448 hertz. Yet when we play them, they sound fine. Why is that? Because here's a chart of pitch versus flow on the diatonic harmonica. Flow, I mean airflow, how hard you are blowing. So if you play a note with normal air pressure, what is normal air breath force or airflow? That's very individual, right? But the pitch will sort of be in the middle of this chart where it comes to 0, okay? And you can play a little bit softer and a little bit harder, and it'll still be a little bit at 0. So here, let's look at this. Let's look at this reed. Okay. Now, if we play with a lot less airflow, the pitch will go up because there's less force pulling the reed down. So see, I played it with light force, and the pitch, the needle showed a much higher pitch, and then you see how the needle, as I apply more breath to the reed, it moves further back, it swings back further, so it has to travel a further distance, and therefore the frequency goes down because it takes longer for it to come back to 0. So our airflow affects the pitch of every reed, so it only makes sense to tune the reed a little bit higher than we need to, so that when we play, and we play with a certain intensity, the pitch drops back down to 440. Okay, Bill Paxton, another great question. How do you know when to blame a problem on a harp and not operator error? What are the most commonly repairable harp problems? What do the most common repairable harp problems sound like? Great question, fantastic question. First off, I deal with that all the time. Is it me or is it the harp? I sell tools, I sell my resources, I want to help you solve a problem. So a lot of the time people will buy my tools and they'll get back to me and they'll say, I'm trying to work on this harp, but I'm not sure if it's me or if it's the harp. So obviously there's a component where you need to be proficient. You can't make a high performing custom harp by yourself if you don't know how to play a high performance custom harp, right? If you don't know what that feels like. So it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. What comes first? Well, obviously you need to know how to play. Now, what if you have limited resources and you don't have access to a good harp? How can you overcome that? How do you know if it's me or the harp? When you're faced with, you're a beginner player and you just bought your first harmonica and you can't bend the 2-draw, you can't bend the 3-draw bends, you can't get them to stay on pitch. Is it me or is it the harp? Do I have a bad harp? So what I tell folks all the time who are buying my tools, who are buying a custom harp for exactly that same reason, how much have you invested in time and money on taking lessons from a good teacher? And a good teacher is not just some person in your area, but if you have access to the internet. You can connect with world-class teachers over Skype or video conferencing, and I recommend that to everybody, no matter what level you are at. You picked up the harmonica because it moved you, and because you wanted to become good, and you wanted to express yourself through it. And part of that, if you're connecting with me, and if you're on my website, you're looking to make your harp the best that it possibly can be, and that's important. But if you haven't put in the same time and effort in connecting with someone who can help you in real time, in person or live on the internet, then you're not doing yourself a service. You want to be able to get to where you want to be comfortable and having fun with the instrument in the shortest amount of time, spending the least amount of money. I would definitely say a lesson or two at least, for someone to say, this is what you should be working on, this is a bad habit, you're doing great at that, keep doing whatever you're doing here, and that will set you straight, and that will save you so much time and save you so much energy. So if you're wondering if it's me or if it's the harp, from a harp repair standpoint, I think you need to work on your proficiency a little bit, and then it'll fall into place. And I'm sorry it's not the answer you want to hear, but then when you pick up that cheap, made in China harmonica, and you try to bend the 3-draw, and you say, that doesn't feel right. I'm not able to you get the feeling. I don't want it. It's not talking. It's not saying what I want it to say. And then you'll realize that it's the harp. And you can go in and adjust reeds. You can make it more airtight, and you can get some satisfaction. But I'm afraid that's the way it works. It doesn't work in the other direction, where you're able to say, okay, all by myself, I've turned this rotten playing harp into a harp that plays great. Now I'm going to go work on my proficiency. That's just the reality. It just doesn't work that way. So I hope that helps. To follow up, Bill, what are the most common repairable harp problems sound like? Well, tuning. When somebody says, they play a harp and you go, wow, that's really well in tune. No, that octave's not in tune. You could hear that, and you can fix that. You can make it sound solid. When you play a note and you try to bend that first semitone bend, and if it's not coming, if you have to work hard at it, if you feel you're doing heavy lifting to do that first semitone bend, you have a problem with the harp. So to further answer the question, is it me or the harp? There's a parallel there, because there's an element of what works for one person might not work for another. It's subjective. So I came up with an assessment. It's a way for you to score how well your harp plays. And what you do is you play a riff, and you play it at regular volume, and make sure it's a riff that represents your playing style. If you're a second position only kind of player, make sure that it has plenty of 2 and 3 draw bends. If you use chords, put some chords into that. So it's a riff that you're familiar with. Play it on this particular harp, and then give the harp a score from 1 to 10. 10 being this harp has great tone and great response, and 1, it's the worst harp ever. So most stock harps would be a 5, let's say, at regular volume. So next step is play the harp at the lowest volume possible. So play it as if there's a baby sleeping right next to you. Play that same riff, the same bends and everything. Now, if you can't play it at low volume, the bends don't come out, and you can only play it at high volume, that's a problem, right? If you're not able to do that, you give it a 0 as a second score. But if you can execute that riff at a significantly lower volume than your standard volume, figure out what score you'd give it at that low volume. Do you feel it has as good tone and as good response at low volume? And then add the two numbers together and divide by 2, and that'll give you, a score. So your regular, off-the-shelf harp plays 5 on 10 at regular volume, and let's say it's a 3 on 10 at low volume, so that would be an average of 4. Okay, but if you take that harp and then you flat sand the draw reed plate and you do some reed work and you fix up the tuning, and the next thing you know, it's a 7.5 on 10 at regular volume and it's a 5 at low volume. Well, you have a much higher score now than you did before. And this sort of gives you an objective number. It's a way of keeping tabs. So it's a little bit related to that. Is it me or is it the harp? We're not looking at one point, but sort of look at it as before and after. Play it a certain way. Play it before you've improved it. Play it at regular breath and at low volume, and then improve it, and then double check, and you can quantify your improvement. So I hope that helps with that question. So Benjamin Tremblay Carpentier, a fellow French Canadian. Salut Benjamin. Hello Andrew. Do you ever customize tremolo harmonicas, or know someone who does? Pas vraiment. Tremolo, not really. Tremolo harmonicas, the way they're built, you have double the amount of reeds, and so that means there's in every chamber there's a lot more opportunity for air leak. There's a lot less opportunity for there to be good contact between the reed plates and the comb. So sure, if you worked on that, you can improve that and you can get a better responding harmonica, but it would never, just because of the nature of the instrument, it will never perform as well as a custom harmonica. So I don't think that there's a lot of market and a lot of success in terms of saying, I really made a significant difference in this instrument. Now, you can work on them yourselves, and that's probably the best value. Just make the reed plates as airtight as possible, and improve the reed shape if you can, and that should work out fine. And the thing with a tremolo is you have two reeds that have exactly the same, or very close to the same pitch. And because there's a difference in pitch with the same note, you get this tremolo effect. And we described that, we use wetness as the descriptor of how strong that difference is. If there's almost no wetness, the notes almost all sound the same. And if it's very wet, well, you have a really big fluctuation, a very big tremolo effect. And those are very subtle, very, very subtle. I was saying those are very subtle tuning changes. My camera failed, so I have to retake this part of the video. My apologies. So to tune a tremolo harmonica and have the same wetness from note to note is a lot of work, because it's very subtle nuances. You have to keep checking, and you have to keep making these very small adjustments, and there's just so many reeds. So a custom tremolo that is airtight, that has all these reeds perfectly tuned, is so much work, and it would be so expensive to get a high-end custom that there really isn't that much of a market for it. So really your best option is to tune them yourself, and you can adjust whatever level of wetness you want, and you can keep them in tune. They're going to go out of tune more often, because the slightest flattening of one reed will change the wetness, and then all of a sudden you're going to have one note that's not as wet or more wet than the others. So best recommendation I have is for you to work on them yourself. So let me know if I can help you out with that.